It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to another Real Estate Podcast, right around Australia, 7 days a week, talking what else but property news and information, of course, from Perth to the Sunshine Coast. And good morning if you're on the Sunshine Coast this morning, especially Mooloolaba. What a great slice of paradise that is. You can stream us on multiple platforms, including iHeartRadio this morning, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon. Now, you might have seen and heard about this as reported just yesterday. An international student in New South Wales is questioning extreme rental rules after being handed a strict list upon moving in. Now, Domain reported that the rules include a $1,000 fine for lost keys and requiring, get this, landlord permission to use the internet with only one device allowed online per tenant. The student also raised concerns over having to provide his MAC address, fearing it could compromise his privacy. Seeking advice online, many called the rules unreasonable, no kidding, with some speculating that they were meant to deter tenants or restrict internet access. You know, there is always one rogue landlord out there, and I guess in this case, the media attention has made it widely known to avoid this rental, which has got to be good karma coming 360 degrees around. It is a Wednesday morning, March the 19th. Let's catch up with Margaret Lomas from Destiny Solutions in Sydney. And good morning to you, Margaret. You'd have something to say about that rogue landlord. $1,000 for losing keys.
I'm going to say that there's probably more than one rogue landlord, and in times when there aren't as many renters or there are more renters than available properties and there are a lot of competition for rentals, it's much easier for these landlords to go out and impose these kinds of rules and really profit from their renting. We just saw one on A Current Affair last night who had very similar things going on, providing squalid conditions, dividing a house into like 6 different parts, having 6 different people in this tiny house and charging them all $300 a week. And it was just crazy. And we do see this happen when people become desperate for rentals. But in fact, in New South Wales and in every state now, there are significant rules for landlords. And I'm pretty confident that in cases like this, where you're asked to pay $1,000 if you've lost a key, that would be considered harsh and oppressive. And if it was tested and they went through the tribunal, there's no way that any tribunal would uphold that particular rule. And I think this particular landlord, if reported, would be forced to change over those rules. It doesn't make it much easier though, because for every one landlord who's found out, there's another 3 or 4 rogue landlords who are still going to go on and really impact on renters and renters' desperation to get somewhere to rent. Many of those renters are young. They won't report someone because they have a fear of being evicted. And of course, new rules prevent that as well. But it's still very difficult for people these days.
Yes, and the bully landlord knows exactly the situation, which is it is a tight rental market. All right, let's get on to something that we talked about over a week ago. This is the First Home Buyers Report released recently. It reveals that mortgage stress has worsened across Australia, with more cities affected than 5 years ago. And they highlight a typical 24 to 35-year-old couple on average wages now face tougher conditions. In 2019, only Sydney and Melbourne had mortgage stress for entry-level houses, but now all capital cities except Darwin are impacted, while Sydney, Brisbane and Adelaide now face unit mortgage stress, and it's probably something you're seeing firsthand.
Absolutely. Even seeing it in my own children who are on reasonable wages but still find it very difficult to keep up with those mortgage repayments. But it is important to note that this is a case of things layering up on top of each other. If it was just interest rates that were higher and everything else remained equal, we had normal wage rises and normal inflation, then we wouldn't be seeing as many people impacted. And I think this is probably the key difference between when we were younger and we faced those 18% interest rates. We didn't notice that around that the cost of living was also impacting us. And at the moment it is. And I saw a report the other day that showed that your standard basket of goods, which is a week's worth of groceries, is now costing $60 a week more than it did just 18 months ago. And that $60 a week translates to $3,000 a year. And I think the realities are it's probably worse than that. They've also got the cost of living pressures. And so there's less money available for that mortgage repayment because food is going to take precedence over whether or not you can pay your mortgage. And I think this is what the problem is. And definitely young people today are finding it much harder for them to meet those mortgage repayments, even at 6 and 7%, which to me is quite low. They are struggling to make those ends meet and therefore reporting that they're in stress.
Yes, and just talking about how expensive things are, when it comes to saving for a deposit, we've all heard the old advice, skip the smashed avocado, make your coffee at home and watch the savings add up. But let's be real, cutting out a few lattes won't get you there in this environment. What will make a difference, though, is stop spending on things that you don't actually need. If you cut out all of these crap purchases that you're buying, you won't just save for your first home, you'll be well on your way to perhaps buying your second property. Now, it's incredible how much stuff people, Margaret, accumulate over the years. And then when they hit 50, they suddenly have this revelation, oh, I've decluttered and it feels amazing. But why wait until then? Start in your 20s. Ditch the junk, focus on what really matters and set yourself up for a stronger financial future.
Absolutely. And I don't want to be one of those people who continuously points to people buying their smashed avos and having these lifestyles that younger people tend to have that we certainly didn't have and say, well, we had it right, you've got it wrong. I think the important thing to note here is that young people do have added pressures that we didn't have as young people. We got to live our lives quite privately, and anything that we did was known by our neighbour and maybe our best friend or our small circle of friends, but not the wider community. And young people do live in this wider community, very public lives through social media, where there's a lot of pressure to perform against other people. And therefore, we're constantly seeing people living these, I guess, often fake lives on social media that makes it look like they've got it all under control and they've got this wonderful life. And I think what is really required here is more of an attitude change and a complete blocking of that norm that you think you need to live up to by not looking at social media, by realizing that in your own household budget, there are probably many things that you can go without now. And I can tell you something that I've learned over time, and that is that while I'm young and robust to go without those extras, to go without eating out and getting takeaway, then it is when you get older and you don't have that energy so much anymore. I wouldn't like to be in a poor financial position now that I'm in my 60s, whereas when I was in my 20s and 30s, I coped with it pretty well. Retirement is a long time, particularly now that we're living so much longer. We can expect to be in retirement 30, 40 years. Think about that and put aside today. Get ahead today, get into your first home, even if it's something you don't want in an area that you don't really want to live in, that you've got to commute from. Take something that's not as good as your dream for now, because what it will do then, it will allow you to snowball and build so that by the time you do retire, you don't have to worry so much about all of these things that are going on in the world.
Yeah, and get one of those dumb phones, one of those phones that doesn't have any apps. I think it just makes phone calls like the old school phone. That will save you a lot of money. Now, let's have a look at the foreign investment ban that we talked about. Both the Labor Party and Coalition have proposed a 2-year ban on foreign purchases of existing homes. While this move is meant to increase housing availability, the impact is likely to be minimal. Kind of makes you wonder why they're bothering when the foreign buyers account for just 1% of real estate transactions, with only a third involving established homes, Margaret.
So we're talking figures of around about 2,000 established homes a year are being purchased by foreign investors, as opposed to another 4,000 that are building new homes and adding to the supply. I guess that's questionable because although they're adding to the supply, they're buying it for themselves, so it's not available for anybody else to buy. But I like to compare it to the adage of olive oil at the moment. I don't know if you're aware that olive oil has gone up by 60% at the moment. So the inflation on olive oil has been huge just in the last year or two. And it would be like saying, well, if you're a person who's buying olive oil to use for anything other than cooking, so let's say you're buying it to use as a massage oil, you're banned from buying it. And only people who want it for cooking can buy olive oil. It's not going to change the fact that olive oil has a worldwide shortage and therefore the prices have skyrocketed on olive oil. It's the same with housing. We have an Australia-wide shortage of housing. If we are going to impact on that, we need a significant strategy to provide more supply. It's the only thing that can fix this. And it's the only lesson that I remember from economics when I was at school, that supply will fix demand in terms of oversupply brings prices down, undersupply takes prices up. It's a fact of life.
All right, well, we'll leave it on that note. Yes, just have a think about that 28% shortfall in new homes at the moment as the population is continuing to grow. Great to catch up and talk again soon.
Fabulous.
Get insider tips from industry professionals and level up your real estate game by unlocking the secrets of successful real estate transactions.
How much of a gobsmacking scenario was that when you actually saw it?
Oh, yeah. So I was actually sitting in my office and I can see Malibu and the Palisades. I noticed a big plume of smoke coming over. And sure enough, it was a fire. I mean, it started out as a regular fire, but I mean, we were talking about 60 to 80 mile per hour winds swept it through the neighborhood. Days later, it became apparent that the entire neighborhood was gone.
Yeah, let's talk about body language, because some people can be very animated and it can be just as telling as the bids themselves in terms of the way somebody is behaving.
How could someone avoid showing their poker hand too early? Well, firstly, don't go up and shake the auctioneer's hand before you start saying, my bank's given me the approval, but a bid to 1.2. I've borrowed 50 grand off mum and dad, I'm going to go to 125. So don't do that, because there's giving away your poker hand, isn't it, Craig?
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.